I want to just start, before we move to the main announcement, to just take a second to talk about all of the amazing things that have been happening here in this community when we talk about housing. Because in fact, just a year ago, if you were just a couple blocks away, we were here for an announcement about a renewal of over 750 homes for women and their families, refugee families, and Indigenous peoples who were moving into homes all across this community. We made a transfer to affordable housing not-for-profits to be able to support it with the Neighbourhood Land Trust and the Circle Community Land Trust, just a block away from here. And if you go just a few blocks beyond that, you get to Gerrard and Leslie, and you would see right now a building that has been built for seniors. It's affordable housing for seniors with a partnership between the federal government and the city, and that created over 30 affordable units. And if you walked only about 10 minutes past that, you would get to a rapid housing initiative building that's going to be creating over 60 units for people who are experiencing homelessness in our community. And if we just look over across towards the river, you'll see amazing work happening in the Portlands right now. We are moving the mouth of the Don River. It's one of the largest infrastructure projects in all of North America. It's going to create public lands and parks. It's also going to unlock lands for more housing. All of that's happening right here in this community, and it's only some of the examples. So today, we get to go and announce one more further step. And it's really an example about how Toronto MPs right here in our community continue to work to stand up for the City of Toronto, to make sure that we're delivering for Toronto. And we get to do that because we work in partnership with the person who I'm about to introduce, which is our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, an amazing partner for our city and for our country when we talk about things like housing and building affordable housing in our city. Thank you.
Merci Julie. Je suis très content d'être ici avec toi aujourd'hui, avec notre équipe de la région de Toronto. It is so great to be here, first of all, with Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, who's been an amazing, not just representative for Toronto, but amazing finance minister, investing in the kinds of things that create growth and opportunity right across the country. Ministers Fraser, thank you, Sean, for being here. As always, your leadership on housing is absolutely extraordinary. Ministers Ian and Anandasangari, Varani, and so many of our amazing Toronto MPs, thank you for being here, for being part of the real important work we're doing right across the community, right across the region. This is an amazing team for Torontonians and for all Canadians. Well, Sean, I think this is probably our last announcement for 2023. We've made a whole bunch of them, but we kept a really, really big one for the end. Today's housing announcement is going to be a game changer for the City of Toronto, but we couldn't be here without the amazing partnership and collaboration of our friend, Mayor Olivia Chow. Olivia, thank you so much for everything you've been doing, your collaboration on this, your passion for building more homes faster, especially affordable homes, is part of why we are able to be so ambitious as we move forward. And you are one of those people who understands that the way to get things done is to work in partnership, and that's why I'm so glad to be doing it with you. Les secteurs privés et à but non lucratif et tous les niveaux de gouvernement doivent travailler ensemble pour construire plus de logements. D'ailleurs, ici où on se trouve, on appuie la construction de 233 appartements avec le financement de la construction de logements locatifs. Ça, c'est à peu près un peu plus que 100 millions de dollars en financement facilité par le gouvernement fédéral pour créer ce bloc ici. Et aujourd'hui, on va parler du fonds pour accélérer la construction de logements. But before we get into it, I want to offer my condolences to the family and loved ones of John Godfrey, a great Torontonian. John was a teacher, a journalist, former member of Parliament representing Don Valley West. People often referred to him as the unofficial Minister of Cities. He understood the importance of working together with all levels of government, just like what we're doing today. His dedication and inspiration will continue to feed us all for years to come, and our thoughts are with his friends and family and all who knew him and loved him well. It is so great to be here Toronto is our biggest city. It's a world-class city. It's an incredibly vibrant place where every neighborhood is unique, whether it's here in Leslieville or in Mount Pleasant, in the Annex, the Beaches, Scarborough, North York, Cabbagetown, and I could name so many others. Young people come to study here in some of our best universities. Others are here to pursue the careers of their dreams. Families from around the world come to Toronto to build a better life. It's a great city, and if we want to keep it great, we have to make homes more affordable. People who come here need to be able to afford to build a life and a family. People who were born here need to be able to succeed in the communities where they grew up. We're facing a shortage of housing right now. Whether you own or rent, the prices of homes have become way too high. And that is why we created the Housing Accelerator Fund to build more homes of all types faster. Aujourd'hui, on annonce une entente avec la Ville de Toronto dans le cadre du Fonds pour accélérer la construction de logements. C'est une entente qui va aider à construire des dizaines de milliers de logements plus rapidement dans les prochaines années. When we launched the Housing Accelerator Fund, we told municipalities they could access these funds with bold plans to eliminate red tape and remove barriers. And that's exactly what this agreement today with Toronto does. Through this funding, Toronto will make it easier to get projects rolling by simplifying rezoning requirements and modernizing regulations. It'll also update old zoning rules. It'll expand existing affordable rental programs, and it'll build more homes near transit. With today's agreement, the City of Toronto will fast-track 12,000 new homes over the next 3 years, and well over 50,000 new homes over the next decade. We're making real progress today with the 16th Housing Accelerator Fund agreement. We've been busy, Sean. Cette semaine, on a aussi fait des annonces à Winnipeg, Mississauga et Burnaby. La semaine dernière, j'étais avec Sean justement à Vancouver pour leur grande annonce. Les ententes qu'on a conclues pour accélérer la construction depuis septembre vont aider à bâtir plus de 380 000 logements plus rapidement au cours de la prochaine décennie. On investit aussi dans le logement abordable. On encourage la construction d'appartements locatifs. Building a better future is hard work. Building hundreds of thousands of homes across the country is hard work. Conservative politicians think we can solve a complex issue like housing with a simplistic video. That's not serious. The Conservative Party keeps voting against funding for housing. If it were up to them, we would not be here today. But our Liberal approach is to work together with municipalities. Our approach is to invest in people. It's to invest in the future. La promesse du Canada, c'est d'améliorer la qualité de vie à chaque génération. Pour s'assurer que la promesse tienne, il faut continuer de travailler fort avec des solutions sérieuses et c'est exactement ce qu'on va continuer de faire. Canada is the best country in the world. Let's keep working together to make it even better. With that, I'm very pleased to pass it over to my friend, the hardest working housing minister in the country, Sean Fraser.
Yay! Look, first, a huge thank you, Prime Minister, for your leadership on the housing file and to give us the tools that we need to succeed, not just as a government, but as a country. I want to acknowledge as well the support of Minister Freeland in particular for making decisions that allow us to have the resources necessary to achieve agreements like the one that we've done today. And an enormous thank you to my colleagues who represent the City of Toronto, who are tremendous advocates for the place that they call home. And I just want to give a huge thank you for their advocacy as well. Today is a great day. It's the kind of day that gives me a sense of optimism that we can actually make the kind of change that will address and solve Canada's national housing crisis. The reality is, just a few short months ago, when we were talking about the ambition of the Housing Accelerator Fund, I don't think people fully understood the possibilities if we en masse cause cities across country to rapidly upzone Canada, so to speak. I want to share a bit of a story about how this particular deal came to be. When I was first appointed to this position, we were looking at the opportunities with the Housing Accelerator Fund. And when it came to the City of Toronto, literally the country's largest city with the slowest permitting process anywhere in Canada, we realized the initial application was not up to snuff. It did not meet the level of ambition that we wanted to address. I intended, after Mayor Chow's election, to raise my concerns about the initial application with her, and she beat me to the punch. She submitted an enhanced application before I had the chance to make that suggestion. Then she came to Ottawa to actually meet with me and others to discuss the kinds of changes that we could encourage them to go further on to squeeze every bit of housing out of the investment that we were prepared to make. As a result of our ongoing conversations, we've landed on a deal that's going to dramatically scale up the density near post-secondary institutions. It's going to lead to far more density near transit stations. It's going to allow people to live where the services and economic opportunities are in communities that already have the infrastructure to support them. The reality is the housing crisis is manifesting in ways that are extremely difficult for ordinary Canadians. There are too many young people who have to commute an hour to get to class. There are too many people starting their career that can't afford a place to live in the place where they found a job. And there's too many seniors who want nothing more than to age in the community where their grandkids are being raised. And I don't think that's too much to ask. Part of the reason that we're dealing with such a challenging housing situation is because over the course of the last number of decades, cities have made it very difficult to build the kinds of homes that will accommodate people who want to live in cities like Toronto. And today we're signaling here in Toronto and across the country, things don't need to be that way. If we make the decision to legalize housing across the city so people can actually build a small apartment for people who want to live in the community, we can make a difference. If we want to build big apartments near the transit stations where we've invested billions of dollars of infrastructure, we can get people moving to opportunities in communities that are desirable to live in. This is an exciting day, but it's not a coincidence that we chose this site for the announcement. This particular project is one that we supported through the Apartment Construction Loan Program, and it demonstrates what density can do. The site that we're on just a few years ago had only 120 homes, Toronto Community Housing. We had a chance during the tour to hear about the new project, which is not only going to replace the 120 homes with newer, higher quality accommodations for families who need the help. They're adding more units to this particular parcel of land where there's now going to be between 800 and 900 homes for people to live in where there was only 120 something before. When we encourage cities to adopt new zoning rules, we can repeat the success of this project over and over, and we can bring Canada's national housing crisis to an end. I want to give a huge thank you to our partners with the City of Toronto. We got a lot of work ahead, but today marks an important occasion to celebrate a new chapter in the city's history when it comes to housing. With that, I'd like to pass the microphone to my friend and colleague, the Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Great work. Okay, you may have noticed housing, and thank you for working so hard for our great city of Toronto. I am so happy to be here today. This is a great day for Toronto. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, for supporting our city, our country, for leading on housing. And I do also really want to offer a shout out to all of my Toronto MP colleagues. They are here, they are splendidly arrayed here. And the Toronto caucus has been so focused on housing and on this issue. I don't know how many times we have had Sean talking with us, meeting after meeting after meeting, because we know that this matters so much to our constituents and to our communities. And I'm really, really happy that we are here with the woman who is our essential partner, Toronto's great mayor. We, all of us, recognize that housing is the central challenge in Canada right now. It's the central challenge in people's lives. It's the central economic challenge. And we know that what we need is to build, build, build. We need supply, supply, supply. And so I do also just want to thank all the people who are here with us in hard hats and vests. We had a chance to talk to some of the people who are building this project, and every single person I talked to was so proud of the work they're doing, and rightly so, and recognized that they are literally building our city, building beautiful homes for their neighbors and their community. We're here to look at some of those homes and also to celebrate an amazing thing, which is an agreement on the Housing Accelerator Fund. We launched that fund in our 2022 budget because we knew then we needed to build more homes faster, and we needed to do it in partnership with municipalities across the country. We needed to bring something to the table to help cities build more faster. That's our contribution, the Housing Accelerator Fund. And we knew that each city is different, so we needed to have great ministers prepared to do the work with great mayors to do deals that work for each city and get more homes built faster. So far, the deals, those 16 deals that Sean and our team have done, will fast-track the construction of more than 380,000 new homes for people across Canada. That is amazing. And today's announcement alone will fast-track nearly 12,000 new homes in Toronto over the next 3 years and more than 53,000 homes over the next decade. And that is just part of our plan. Toronto is a growing city, and it needs governments at all levels to respond to those needs. Just last month, I was able to announce 2 major rental housing construction projects being built right across Toronto, using the fund that Sean referred to, the Apartment Construction Loan Program, including 2,700 new homes just up the street from my riding. The mayor was there too. And the people who are building this project told me, I asked the Prime Minister to say this specifically to you, because the Prime Minister has been a real driving force behind the design of the Apartment Construction Loan Program. They told me that is a great program. It helps create incentives for builders like the ones who are building this building to build rental construction rather than condos, homes that supply exactly that essential niche in our market. That's why we were so glad, our team together, to add $15 billion more to that fund in the fall economic statement. I am so glad that we are able to support this amazing city. Toronto est une ville extraordinaire qui est très importante pour notre province, pour notre pays, qui est un moteur pour notre plan économique. Et voilà pourquoi notre gouvernement a investi et va continuer d'investir dans notre ville magnifique. C'est notre gouvernement qui a fait plus d'investissements du fédéral dans la ville de Toronto qu'aucun gouvernement fédéral dans l'histoire du Canada. Et je suis tellement heureuse d'être ici avec la mairesse de Toronto. J'apprécie énormément la collaboration qu'on a avec elle. And, you know, I love doing announcements with the mayor, partly because we make each other look tall. There was one week during our constituency week that we did 3 announcements together in the same week. We also have a special connection because she's my mayor and I'm her MP. She's my constituent. So we both are responsible to each other and to our constituents in this amazing city. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And it is really my privilege to introduce a really important partner for the federal government, Mayor of Canada's biggest city, Mayor Olivia Chow. Madame, à vous la parole.
Thank you. Good morning. So wonderful to be here. I am joined here with Deputy Mayor Mike Cole, Deputy Mayor Jennifer McHelvey, and Councillor Brad Bradford, Councillor Paula Fletcher. Have I missed any other of my colleagues? Oh, okay. Oh, right. Councillor Gord Perks. Last time around this year, one of my best students at the Toronto Metropolitan University disappeared from my class for several weeks. Hamza was a smart and conscientious student, so I was really surprised when he stopped coming into class. Turns out that Hamza was evicted from his apartment because of a gigantic rent increase that he can't pay. He bounced from shelter to shelters and got increasingly desperate. Each night, over 10,000 Torontonians sleep in city shelters, and more than 80,000 households are on a waiting list for years and years for affordable housing. And too many young people are giving up the hope of having an affordable home one day, and it is just hard. And the high cost of housing means mothers have to choose between paying rent or buying food for the kids. Young people and families are being forced to move out of the city. Seniors with fixed incomes are terrified they will be evicted and unable to find an apartment they can afford. Today is December 21st, winter solstice. It's a time that we put darkness behind us. It's a time for new beginning, for transformation. And we are gathered here to announce a hopeful new beginning, where under the leadership of our Prime Minister and his government, his team, tens of thousands of construction-ready homes will be built over the coming years. That's exciting. Yes, it needs a round of applause at least. These homes include new rent geared to income, below market and market rents, units in mixed income, mixed-use communities and neighborhoods. And as part of the Housing Accelerator Fund deal, we are reaffirming our commitment to match the urgency of our housing crisis with the speed of our actions. I am so grateful and happy to be standing here today with our Prime Minister, our Deputy Prime Minister, our Housing Minister, the local Member of Parliament, entire Liberal Toronto caucus here. And thank you for providing hope to thousands of people, young and old, from all walks of life, and giving them a new beginning. We are providing hope to people like Hamza. A fresh start that comes from knowing that there will be thousands of units of secure and affordable homes just like those here at the Dawn Summerview Toronto Community Housing Revitalization Project. I want to acknowledge the local councillor, Councillor Paula Fletcher, who fought for years to have more affordable housing included in this project. It's the first community housing revitalization project to hit the goal of 30% rent geared to income and below market housing. Thanks to her hard work and the team here, I see city staff, very committed folks, and everyone with hard hats on. This development has 100 more affordable units, including 32 co-op units, plus 120 rent geared to income units, 550 condos and rentals. Thank you, Paula. Thank you to all of you. This new mixed income community is an example of what we can accomplish together. Imagine with this new federal government support, the city will be able to build more affordable housing just like this project. It is beyond exciting. We will make it easier and faster to get approvals. We will allow for more density and more types of housing. Today's announcement is a significant step. I look forward to continue partnership and future announcements as we work together to build more housing faster for the people of Toronto. Thank you so much for being here.
We will now start the press conference. Nous allons maintenant commencer avec la conférence de presse. First question goes to Jeff Gray from the Globe and Mail.
Thanks. Hi, Prime Minister. Wanted to ask, when people look at the numbers, you know, this program, 380,000 homes over a decade, when people see the numbers from The Economist, from the CMHC, we're talking about millions of homes that are required. How is this not just a drop in the bucket?
One of the things we've been doing over the past years has been changing the math, changing the way people look at building housing in our communities, in our cities, right across the country. We're here in a building where the federal government facilitated over $100 million worth of financing to allow this to happen. And that was done years ago with the Rental Construction Financing Fund initiative that actually allows for these sorts of things. We're changing the math for developers, not just by putting money in specific projects, but by creating a pathway forward. And that's exactly what we're doing with the Housing Accelerator as well, which is not just about building direct units, which is part of it, but it's also about changing the rules around densification and zoning so that more and more units can be built independently of the federal government, independently of whether there's direct investment or not. So yes, there are predictions of hundreds of thousands of new units to be built over the coming years, but we actually know that the way we're changing the rules of the game, thanks to the extraordinary leadership of cities like Toronto that are seeing that changing the way we get things built in this country is the only way to keep up with the growth and the ambition that Canadians have for the country we're continuing to build every day.
And as a follow-up, there are people saying that one of the things the federal government could do or should do is temper the immigration targets, that's exacerbating the housing crisis. What do you say to that?
Actually, it's not the immigration targets. Yes, we're seeing big numbers, but we have to understand there's a breakdown in those numbers. First of all, our immigration targets of close to 500,000 permanent residents every year, that is the steady growth that is going to continue to grow our economy. But there are three areas in which we've seen massive expansion over the past years that we need to make sure we're dealing with in an appropriate and responsible way. The first one is around asylum seekers. We've seen, despite the closing of Roxham Road, we've seen a spike in asylum seekers, and we're working with international partners and we're putting in mechanisms to make sure that we're able to support the people who come here fleeing violence, persecution, and war. The second area is around international students. And one of the things that we've seen over the past years is a massive expansion in international students. That's great. They come here, they benefit to our universities, they contribute to our economy in many ways, but it has to be done in a responsible way. And that's why we're moving forward with a process that's going to ensure that those students who show up are actually going to accredited, responsible institutions of learning that have a plan to ensure housing for the international students who come, instead of just welcoming them in and expecting them to fend for themselves in the communities that surround those institutions. It's something that that is a logical step, and that's an announcement we've made, that international student visas and acceptance will be tied to whether or not the institutions have a plan to actually ensure adequate and supportive housing for those students. And the third area where we've seen massive growth is around temporary workers. We need workers to grow our economy, but we need to make sure it's being done right and responsibly. And again, there's work that we're doing with employers to make sure that if they really need to bring in someone from overseas to be able to succeed as a business, well, they have to be more involved in ensuring adequate housing for the people they bring in. It's all about continuing to grow our economy and benefit from immigration, but doing it in ways that does benefit and strengthen our communities in the right ways.
Next question.
Aidan Schmandy from the Trillium. This is for Minister Fraser. So one of the biggest asks of the city to access this funding was to do BC-style upzoning around transit. The city's response didn't explicitly commit to that, so I'm wondering why you approved this application if that kind of key commitment wasn't in there.
So one of the key things to understand is that the Housing Accelerator Fund is designed to motivate changes within the control of municipal governments. There is no question in my mind that the city has the ambition to build out the transit-oriented development that I want to see that's going to help not only solve Toronto's housing crisis, but the housing challenges in communities that exist around Toronto and not just within the GTA, frankly. You'll all be familiar with the drive to qualify phenomenon. If we actually build out stock around transit, we can solve some of these big challenges. I had some concerns initially when I saw the proposed response, but I have to say credit to the debate that played out at City Council, and I know Councillor Bradford's here, who put forward a motion that gave me some comfort the city's going to move in that direction, and our engagement directly with the Mayor's office has indicated that they have a desire to move forward. There is a provincial government element to this conversation as well around major transit station areas. I'll be meeting this afternoon with Minister Calandra to discuss this amongst other items as well. But the agreement is structured in a way that 25% of the funding, $471 million, by the way, to build these 53,000 homes over the next decade, is structured in a way where 25% flows up front. The balance is released as milestones are met over the course of the agreement. So we're going to continue to work very closely with the city and, where appropriate, the province to ensure we actually see the reforms that will get housing built. I'm not interested in just seeing a commitment made. I'm interested in seeing change have an impact, and I have full faith we'll get there with the city.
So the follow-up is on the provincial government involvement with the official plans, and I'm wondering if I could also get Mayor Chow to step in on this one as well, but also interested, Mr. Fraser, in your meeting with Mr. Calandra. So do both of you expect the province to step in and upzone beyond what the Toronto official plan currently says?
Absolutely. I know that the provincial government is very interested in increasing the density in all the transit hubs. We have been in negotiation, and we have just recently approved one, a huge one, that unlocked 8,000 units of housing in just one area. So there are a lot more to come.
Next question.
Prime Minister Mark McAllister from City News. There are other asks on the table from the city beyond just housing. Obviously, you're very aware of the refugee crisis in this city and the need to be able to do more to help those people out. What more can the federal government do?
The federal government will continue to be there as a partner to the City of Toronto and indeed to cities across the country. We have stepped up over the past years with hundreds of millions of dollars across the country in support for asylum seekers, and we will continue to. I have already had great conversations with Mayor Chow, and we're going to continue to work together on these issues. It is an important thing that we need to bring in the province, continue to bring in the provinces in as well, but the federal government is always going to be here as a partner for the City of Toronto.
A follow-up to that, more or less on the same theme, more asks from the city in terms of federal dollars. We keep hearing about subway trains in this city. We know that transit is being developed and is being built at this point, but there's a need to be able to operate those subway systems with more trains. What can be done?
Olivia and I have known each other for over 15 years now, and those early years were spent fighting against a federal government that refused to invest in transit, refused to invest in infrastructure. And we changed that approach. We made sure that the federal government was there as a partner in growing our cities. We recognize that cities are mostly a provincial jurisdiction, but we also knew that the federal government needed to step up. And that's what we did with historic investments in public transit, now with historic investments in housing, including the $471 million announcement we're making today. We're going to continue to be there, and we need to make sure that all orders of government are working together with the vision and the progressive partner that Olivia is, not just for our government, but for all people in Toronto, and bringing the province along on this. We're excited about what we're going to be able to do all together in the coming years.
Hey, good morning, Prime Minister. Colin DeMella from Global News. A pandemic-related procurement. Your government spent $2 billion buying a COVID-19 rapid test, the lime green ones from BTNX. Global News found that the company edited their clinical studies given to Health Canada for approval without explanation, which made the tests appear more reliable. Wondering, how did this happen under your watch, and will the government review the decision to approve these tests?
One of the things we have to remember is during the pandemic, we were doing everything we could in unprecedented ways to get as many different ways of keeping Canadians safe as we possibly could, whether it was on rapid tests, whether it was on procurement of PPE, whether it was on contracts for vaccines and getting the vaccines needed to make sure that Canadians got through this pandemic. There are no doubt and obviously lots of lessons to learn about things that worked really well, about things that we probably won't be doing again in the next pandemic when it comes. But every step of the way through the pandemic, it was all hands on deck with every different way we could do to try and make sure we were saving as many lives as possible and getting our economy back on its feet as quickly as possible, which is actually, both of which, what happened more in Canada than in most of our peer countries.
But isn't there still a question about how this would have slipped through the cracks? Should there be some kind of a federal investigation to look into this company, look into what submissions they made to Health Canada so that something like this doesn't happen again in the event of...
Absolutely. Part of coming through this pandemic is, having gone through the acute phase of this pandemic, is learning about what worked well, what worked less well, making sure that next time, if there is a next time, we are ready for it. So much of what Canada was able to do during this pandemic better and faster than some of our peer countries was related to the experiences we'd had in 2003 during the SARS crisis, where the Honourable Carolyn Bennett launched the creation of Canada's Public Health Agency, where learning about how to deal with these things and do better informed why Canada did better through the pandemic than many other countries. But there's lots more to learn, and we will be following up on all the lessons we need to learn.
Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Tyler Griffin, Canadian Press. Your joint statement last week with Australia and New Zealand said there is no role for Hamas in the future governance of Gaza. How do we get there?
Hamas is a terrorist organization. Hamas was responsible for the cold-blooded execution of over 1,000 Israeli citizens on October 7th and has committed to continuing those attacks long into the future. Hamas cannot have any role in the future governance of Gaza or in the two-state solution we need to build with a secure and free Israel alongside a secure and free Palestinian state. That is the work we need to do, and we are absolutely committed to it. And that's why we're calling for humanitarian pauses as quickly as possible and working urgently towards a ceasefire with international partners. But that ceasefire cannot be conditional. Hamas has to lay down its arms. It has to release all hostages. It has to stop using civilians as human shields. And it has to understand there will be no role for Hamas in the future governance of Gaza. And we continue to work very closely with partners, both G7 and international partners like Australia and New Zealand, but also with partners from the Gulf states and the Arab countries to move towards that viable two-state solution that is so necessary.
There have now been several examples of parents or siblings of Canadian citizens dying in Gaza as they plead for your government to take some kind of action to facilitate getting them out. To date, we have not seen any movement toward practical measures to get Canadians' extended families to safety. We understand there's an announcement coming this afternoon. Why has it taken so long?
Obviously, it's an extremely difficult situation, and we have been working very, very hard to get Canadian citizens and their families out of Gaza. Well over 600 have come already, but there is more to do. And that's why I'm looking forward to this announcement that's going to lay out more measures that we're putting in place to protect those who are related to Canadians or connected to Canada to come to safety. But ultimately, what we need to do is ensure the viability of a Palestinian state alongside an Israeli state, living in peace, living in security into the future. And that's what we remain focused on. We have an important role to play as well here in Canada as a place with a richness of diversity in bringing people together to being part of building that future. And that's why we need to be so firm in standing up against hatred in all its forms. I'm particularly concerned about the rise in anti-Semitism that we're seeing because we all have a role to play in standing against intolerance and anti-Semitism and in supporting people. The concerning situation that led to an arrest in the Ottawa region very recently is something we're going to continue to be vigilant about. But I also need to make sure we are calling out incidents of anti-Semitism wherever they rear their heads. And on that specifically, the Toronto Sun editorial cartoon, which published the worst kind of anti-Semitic content, was absolutely unacceptable. We all have a role to play to make sure that Canadians are there for each other and that we're dealing with understanding and compassion and not playing to stereotypes. And I think we all can expect better from our media organizations.
Next question.
Hello, Prime Minister. Momin Qureshi with City News 680. I just wanted to circle back to refugees. The City of Toronto is currently in its budget process, and the Mayor and other members of the Budget Committee have said if the federal government doesn't come through with funding for refugees, that they may have to raise property taxes by 6% just because of this issue alone. So my question is, will the federal government come through with the funding before the city passes its budget in 6 weeks? And if not, what do you say to Toronto taxpayers who would have to shoulder that burden?
I look forward very much to sitting down with Mayor Chow this afternoon and talking about these issues. And the reality is we have been there with over $100 million in funding since this summer on this issue, and we will continue to. It is good news that the province is finally stepping up in significant ways, and we're going to continue to look for ways to be helpful because this is an issue that really matters.
And a follow-up to that is, just wanted to check in and see where the federal government's involvement is in the working group. We know the city kind of deal with the province, and a lot of that deal is contingent on the federal government matching funds for shelters, for subways. So where do we stand with the working group, and can we expect to see some sort of result soon?
No federal government in recent history has been more present as a partner for Toronto than this one. We're standing right now in a building that is being built because of over $100 million worth of financing permitted by the federal government. We're announcing $471 million in federal money that is going directly to the city. The province of Quebec chose to actually match that Housing Accelerator funding for their province. They're the only province to do that. We'd certainly love to see the province of Ontario step up in greater ways on housing and on a lot of different issues. We will always be there for a partner to Toronto, and I look forward to my conversation with Mayor Chow.
Next question.
Phil Perkins, CB24. We're just going to circle back to the Middle East real quick. You may have heard there's some pro-Palestinian protesters outside. You're getting a little bit of heat from Jewish communities after Hamas leader, commended Canada. It seems like you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place right now. So just to reiterate, what is the stance, your stance on the war right now? Do you still support a ceasefire? Do you believe Hamas should be removed from Gaza?
First of all, Canadians are feeling extremely impacted on all sides by the situation in the Middle East. It is extremely disconcerting. It's led to a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of grief and hurt as well. And we need to make sure as Canadians, we are there for each other. Our position on the Middle East is absolutely crystal clear. There's a humanitarian catastrophe ongoing right now. Israel has the right to defend itself in accordance with international law. We're calling for humanitarian ceasefire as quickly as possible, humanitarian pauses as quickly as possible, while we work towards a ceasefire that's going to be sustainable. But that ceasefire cannot be one-sided. Hamas must lay down its arms, must release all hostages, must stop using people as human shields, and must understand that Hamas has no role in the future governance of Gaza. And we all must work together towards a two-state solution where the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people result in a safe, secure Palestinian state with internationally recognized borders alongside a safe, secure, viable Israel. This is where we need to go, and this is what Canada has been working with allies, with partners, with organizations around the world, and we will continue to be unequivocal in our fighting for peace and for protection of all civilian life.
Dernière question.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre, Jean-Loup Doudard de Radio-Canada. La Société canadienne d'hypothèques et de logement parle de 3,5 millions de logements nécessaires d'ici 2030. Vous parlez d'environ 380 000 avec les annonces d'aujourd'hui et celles des mois précédents. Est-ce que c'est assez pour répondre à la demande?
Évidemment, ça en prend beaucoup plus, mais c'est pour ça que nos annonces ne sont pas tout simplement annoncer des unités qu'on est en train de financer directement. Nos annonces sont ancrés dans la transformation de la façon qu'on est en train de bâtir du logement ici au Canada. On est en train de changer le zonage, la densification, la façon de livrer des permis. C'est les investissements qu'on envoie, comme ici à Toronto avec 471 millions de dollars. C'est des investissements qui vont débloquer et permettre à encore plus de logements qui vont être construits dans les années à venir. Parce que le besoin est là, la capacité est là, et maintenant, on a le partenariat avec les autres ordres de gouvernement qui vont pouvoir le livrer.
This concludes the press conference. Ceci conclut la conférence de presse. Thank you, everyone.
Merci beaucoup.